Revealed. The note that changed everything. A waitress's amazing warning exposed a hidden danger. Sarah wiped down the last sticky table, as the laughter of the businesspeople at the back of the diner echoed in the air. Their suits were crisp, polished, and intimidating. From her small corner of the diner, she served coffee and pie, offering warm smiles to the familiar faces of regulars. But the jovial atmosphere shifted as she listened more closely to their conversation. They spoke of a significant development project designed to bring prosperity to her small town. Yet beneath their slick words she sensed something sinister. Her heart sank at the thought of bulldozers and high-rises toppling the little lives she worked so hard to support. Just then, something caught her eye, a crumpled note that had slipped from their table. Intrigued, she picked it up. The note detailed alarming safety concerns about the project, whispers of a hidden agenda lurking beneath the surface. The promises of jobs and growth hung in the air like smoke, but the truths within the note whispered a warning. Her heart raced, torn between her responsibilities. Should she ignore this unsettling feeling for a shot at a more secure life for Ethan? Or should she confront the danger her community faced? The thought twisted in her gut. She knew the stakes were high. Trusting strangers had never been her strong suit. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that is happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. As Sarah leaned against the counter, the weight of the note felt heavier. Time slowed around her. If she chose to speak out, who would believe a waitress? But to stay silent felt like a surrender. It was the kind of choice that haunted mothers. This could spell disaster for families like hers if the project were to proceed unchecked. With each passing moment, her mind spiraled through a maze of fear and doubt. The faces of her neighbors flooded her thoughts, children playing in yards that could vanish, families uprooted for profit. How could she justify chasing merely a brighter future for Ethan at the cost of so many? The thought of sharing the truth suffocated her, and she ached for guidance. Her mentor, Hank, had always believed in her tenacity. The aging journalist was a lighthouse in a stormy sea. Together, they had uncovered murky truths before. But this felt scarier, more personal. If she stepped into the light and revealed the corruption, could she withstand the backlash? The kindness of her community was not a shield against merciless developers. What if the very people she tried to protect turned against her? The day of the town hall meeting loomed. A knot formed in her stomach as she rehearsed her speech endlessly. Would the community listen? Or would their devotion to economic growth drown out her warnings? The silence surrounding her felt oppressive, and yet she wished to scream the truth from the rooftops. Just as she began to gather strength, the realization that her enemies could strike her where it hurt most, her family, settled on her like a shroud. As she found herself facing the powerful businesspeople in the room, the fear transformed into a heart-stopping panic. Would their greed silence her voice forever? She had to choose, but nothing could prepare her for the moment when the truth collided with everything she held dear. Sarah awakened the next morning, heart pounding and breath shallow, as if the weight of the note pressed down on her chest. Every conversation, every laugh from the diner flashed before her eyes. The idea of the town hall meeting felt like a hot ember lodged in her throat, burning against the weight of unspoken words. She glanced over at Ethan, still lost in innocent dreams, and the thought of a world where they could lose their simple life crushed her in ways she had never expected. The sun cast long shadows through the window, illuminating a mess of unwashed dishes. She forced herself to get out of bed, knowing that action was necessary. As she scrubbed and washed, her mind raced with possibilities and contingencies. If she did speak up, how could she present her case? Would raw emotion sway anyone? Would statistics ring true in the hearts of listeners? Or would they see her only as a waitress, someone relegated to the sidelines of significant discussions? At that moment, the phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was Hank. His voice came over the line with familiar warmth and urgency. "Sarah, I heard through the grapevine about the town meeting. Have you given it any thought?" "I have, Hank. But the note, it's been haunting me. What if I'm wrong? What if standing up is the worst thing I could do? Nothing ventured, nothing gained, he replied. Every moment you hesitate, those developers grow more confident. Speak from your heart. Trust in your instincts. His words reverberated within her, a call to arms against a rising tide of apathy. It was a turning point. She could feel the shifting in her gut. But how to craft a message that wouldn't be drowned out by the noise of promises and false hopes? She visualized the community atmosphere, the spirited hometown pride mingling with hidden fears of change. Was it her job to unveil those fears, or simply to let them lay dormant? Gathering her notes, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, piecing together her thoughts one line at a time, each mediated through a cycle of doubt and determination. She found herself reclaiming insights from her years of waiting tables, experiences of listening to people's stories, understanding their struggles. A waitress had to navigate different emotions and opinions every day. Maybe that was what she needed to tap into. As she prepared, she recognized the power of delivery. The notepad flourished with lines like, "Promises of growth often overshadow the voices of the vulnerable." Each statement felt heavier, more potent, but she still hesitated. She was beginning to find her voice, but could she sustain it when challenged? The day grew closer, and as Sarah completed her preparation, a familiar sense of dread broke through, reminding her of her responsibilities, reminding her of Ethan, reminding her of the family she stood to protect. She needed to internalize her speech, not just memorize words, but make them her own. How could she invoke the passion of those surrounding her when she felt the divide between her and the powerful at the helm of this project? Hours before the gathering, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring down the person looking back. "It's time, Sarah," she whispered, conviction flooding her veins. She fought against the longest night of insecurity and emerged determined. But as she left the house clutching her notes, she glanced back at Ethan before stepping into the unknown. The town hall echoed with chatter when she arrived, and Sarah could feel the electricity in the air, the blend of anticipation and dread coursed through the crowd. As she moved toward the stage, every heartbeat echoed her solution. But the moment she laid eyes on the developers, smug and assured of their triumph, doubt blossomed anew. Would they listen to her? The time had come to confront not just the developers, but part of herself, a hidden resolve she hadn't realized existed until now. As she took her place near the dais, everything froze in anticipation. Would she be brave enough? And what would the reaction be if she dared to unveil her truth? The stakes felt impossibly high, but this was her moment. The weight of her community lived in those words, and suddenly, she had no choice. Before she could second-guess herself, she took a deep breath, and the silence beckoned her to speak as the spotlight fell upon her. Would her words bring hope or more trouble? The pivotal question lingered in the air. She opened her mouth to begin. The words hesitated on her tongue as she stood paralyzed under the spotlight. The room seemed to constrict around her, the murmurs of the crowd growing distant, replaced by the steady thrumming of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She felt the weight of the note in her pocket, a message of caution that could tip this delicate balance between progress and preservation. With a deep breath, she steadied herself, centering her thoughts. "My name is Sarah," she finally managed, her voice cracking slightly. The murmurs lessened as she took a cautious step forward. "I'm just a waitress at the diner, and I stand before you today, not as a fierce activist, but as a concerned mother and a member of this town." The room shifted, slight frowns forming on the faces in the crowd. Sarah's heart raced, but something inside urged her to press on. "I've had the privilege to serve you all, listening to your dreams, your fears, and your stories of how this town has shaped our lives." She caught a few familiar faces in the audience, comforting reminders of community amidst her uncertainty. "But," she continued, determination lacing her words, "I'm afraid of what this development project will mean for us. We've been given promises of growth, but at what cost? We must consider what sacrifices we are willing to make for someone else's vision." A silence hung thick in the air, broken intermittently by gasps of understanding and discontent. Every eye in the room seemed to scrutinize her, weighing her words. Would they see her as just a waitress? Or would they recognize her as their neighbor, someone who shared their struggles? "Change is inevitable," she acknowledged with a slight nod, "but we must be the ones steering our course." not the developers who see our community as a mere line on a balance sheet. Those last words formed a weighty impact, resonating with the crowd. As she spoke, Sarah found herself tapping into an unseen reservoir of passion. Each line she delivered became a part of her overcoming the years of self-doubt. Those quiet moments when she thought she wouldn't matter. When she believed her role was merely to serve others. This was a moment of truth. She had to convince them that they were worth fighting for. Their expressions shifted subtly, soaking in the raw authenticity of her plea. She recalled conversations over coffee at the diner, where dreams of preserving this town buzzed amidst the ordinary chatter. We all have a stake in our future. If we allow decisions to be made for us, we not only lose our homes, but we lose the very essence of what makes our community special. With each word, she felt the veil of invisibility she often donned start to lift. For the first time, she wasn't just a waitress. She was a passionate advocate for her family's future. It dawned on her with sudden clarity this wasn't about changing a singular opinion. It was about influencing hearts and igniting direction for those lost in indecision. As the crowd began to nod, showing signs of agreement, Sarah felt a flicker of hope ignite in her chest. She was doing it. But just as she thought she had seized their attention, she spotted one of the developers, sharply dressed and leaning back in his chair with a smug grin. He clearly believed he had the upper hand. A faltering thought flitted through her. What if he dismissed everything she said? What if he marred this moment with scorn? While they may promise jobs and shiny developments, she pressed on. Let us not forget the unseen consequences. The traditions we uphold. The values we cherish here, they hold immeasurable worth beyond any fiscal projection. Sarah paused, letting those words hang in the air, but as she scanned the crowd, she felt the flicker of dissent re-emerge against her advocacy, questioning on the tipping point of their allegiance. The time for her moment of truth was at hand. If we stand together as guardians of our home, we can demand to be heard rather than ignored. But would the crowd embrace her passionate call? Or would doubt creep back, silencing her voice yet again? As Sarah prepared to take her concluding stand, her internal alarm rang loud. The real confrontation was just beginning, not only against the developer's interests, but against the skepticism of her own community. The future awaited beyond these walls, but would it unfold towards hope or despair? Her heart thrummed with purpose, a metronome setting the rhythm of her mounting resolve. She could sense the pulsing shift in the room as she moved to solidify the ground she had gained. She took a step closer to the edge of the stage, voice steadying as she faced the audience. The tension was palpable, and for every breath she drew, doubts clung to her like shadows, whispering their trepidations in her ear. This isn't just about loss. It's about what we can gain when we stand united, she declared, feeling the fierce tang of courage ignite in her stomach. Images of her children flashed in her mind. The way they laughed while playing tag outside. The way they painted the family room walls in reckless abandon. She could not let that laughter be erased by a cold, corporate decision made at a distant boardroom table. We can create a vision for our town together. A vision that reflects our values, not one that prioritizes profits. Cheers erupted, and Sarah craved to linger in that moment, but questions loomed larger. Images of the developer's amused expression haunted her, a reminder that this would not be merely a conversation. It was potentially a war for their home. You see, I know that many of you are uncertain about my position here. After all, I'm just a waitress, a mom struggling to make ends meet, she admitted, vulnerability channeling through her voice. But that doesn't mean my voice isn't powerful. With every confession, she could feel the gravity of her words pushing against the walls of self-doubt she had built for too long. We each have a mom, a dad, a neighbor fighting for something greater. We have wisdom woven into the very fabric of this town. We must use it. Her words were met with murmurs of agreement. Heads nodded slowly, but a quick glance at the developer's cocky expression caused her heart to tumble. He wouldn't surrender easily, she realized, fear mingling with her determination. An image of her grandmother's hands, rough yet wise, guiding her through hardships flashed in her mind. They told stories, two stories that mattered. She continued, pushing through the tension. I might just serve coffee and fries, but what matters most is my place here, in front of you. I'm not asking anyone to agree with me blindly. I'm asking you to join me in demanding clarity and transparency." As she spoke, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking on a tightrope, balanced delicately between confidence and the abyss of fear. Would they be willing to stand beside her? Or would they fall back into complacency? What is at stake here? She pressed on. It's not merely a renovation, it's our community legacy. She saw their eyes lighting up. Hope flickered amidst their uncertainty, and in that moment, she tasted possibility. But the developer, amused and dismissive, leaned forward, challenging her with an icy demeanor. "We're here to bring jobs, Sarah. You really believe your coffee shop stories mean more than jobs?" His smug arrogance nearly toppled her resolve. In that instant, a decision crystallized within her. She had combated self-doubt her entire life, and it was time to embrace her newfound strength. Yes, because in preserving our history, we secure our future, our children's futures. The words shot from her like arrows, each laced with the conviction of uncountable late nights of worry. The murmurs turned to applause, echoing warmth lapping at the edges of her conviction. But just then, a thought shattered the euphoria. What if her strength still wasn't enough? As dim lights began to flicker back into focus, Sarah glanced around. She sensed clarity creeping into the fog. She knew the stakes were rising, and beyond these walls, the battle for their home was only starting. Would she channel this newfound voice into tangible change, or would she falter before the final confrontation? With uncertainty twisting inside, she braced herself. The next round promised to be a battle of wills. In that moment, one resounding question rose in her mind. Was she ready to confront not just the developers, but also the narratives she had feared her whole life? The applause washed over her like a tide, but as the echoes faded, Sarah felt the weight of her words pressing down, solidifying her anxiety into a palpable form. She stepped off the stage, heart racing, her pulse thrumming with a mixture of exhilaration and dread. How could one moment of clarity feel so heavy? Backstage, she leaned against the cool wall, closing her eyes for a moment to catch her breath. This newfound voice had felt powerful, but now she grappled with that privilege. What was it worth if the fight ahead was lost? Her mind raced. Was she equipped to combat a developer who thrived on intimidation and empty promises of growth? As adrenaline ebbed, her thoughts circled like predatory birds. The image of her children laughing outside became a haunting reminder of everything at stake. But, in that introspection, she felt a small flicker of resolve igniting within her. Her experiences shaped her for moments like this. She had long been the caretaker, the planner, the anchor. Why should she not step into this role as well? With determination blooming, she wandered outside for fresh air, seeking solitude. The night wrapped around her, cool and invigorating, pushing her to think clearly. The quietness of the surroundings began to reveal patterns and strategies she had previously dismissed. Breathing deeply, she whispered to herself, "What if I didn't just rely on my emotions but also on strategic thinking?" Returning home later, the clatter of dinner preparations felt oddly comforting. As she stirred a pot, an idea began to crystallize in her mind. She needed to understand the developer better, to confront his arguments before they became cemented. Providing clarity would strengthen her stance. It was time to research not just the project, but the developer's history, his business practices. What had propelled him to make such a gamble on their town? That night, Sarah minored in investigation, equipped with a notebook and a determination forged in the day's fires. She pored over public records, seeking loopholes, building blueprints, and anecdotal testimonials from towns affected by similar projects elsewhere. Each finding felt like a small victory, a step towards reclaiming not just the narrative of their town, but also her sense of agency. As she dug deeper, doubts reared their heads once more. What if this endeavor only exposed her inexperience? What if she didn't find anything that mattered? Still, a counterbalancing thought soothed her. Knowledge is power. Whatever the outcome, she could arm herself with clarity. The following weeks rolled by in a blur of research, gathering allies and crafting a coherent, compelling narrative against the impending changes. Sarah began to hold informal meetings in her living room, inviting neighbors, sharing findings, and encouraging discussions. Slowly, she saw the spark of activism ignite in others' eyes. Conversations that once revolved around everyday trivialities now evolved into passionate debates about the importance of their shared history. Yet, just as victories burgeoned, so did potential threats. News arrived that the developer had ramped up his campaign, conspicuously plastering advertisements around town, promising jobs and modernization. Suddenly, the battle lines became harsher, and Sarah could feel an undertow of intimidation rising. His smugness, evident in every press release, loomed like a specter, threatening to overshadow her budding coalition. One evening, as Sarah glanced at the papers covering her kitchen table, the enormity of her task settled over her. She was leading something larger than herself. Failure felt tragically imminent. Did she possess the courage to stand against this mounting pressure? Then she discovered something in the fine print of one legal document, a peculiar clause regarding the town's historic preservation guidelines. It could be the leverage she needed, the very weapon against the looming threat. Sitting upright, each pulse of the clock matching her racing heartbeat echoed a single thought. Could this realization shift the tide in their favor? As she planned her next steps, doubt began to swirl again. The focus would now be on presenting this knowledge to her neighbors, rallying them once more against an imminent showdown. Could she keep this momentum alive? The time had come to face the reality that victory would not only demand clarity, it would require the community's unwavering resolve against the vacant promises lies can so eloquently spin. With the developer's next public meeting looming, one blaring question arose in Sarah's mind. Would they stand together, or would her efforts tumble down like a house built on sand? The air was thick with anticipation as Sarah prepared her notes for the upcoming meeting. She spent days crafting the presentation, fine-tuning her arguments, and rehearsing her delivery. The thought of standing in front of a crowd again brought on waves of anxiety, but this time, there was a sense of purpose fueling her. She wasn't merely reacting to the developer's plans. She was positioning herself as the counterforce to his calculated facade. As she loaded her presentation slides into her laptop, Sarah felt the flutter of doubt begin to creep in. What if her neighbors didn't respond the way she needed them to? What if they were lulled by promises of new jobs and progress? With each negative thought, she reminded herself of the moments their community had shared, a strong bond forged through years of friendship and shared experiences. She had to leverage that connection, using it as her greatest asset. On the day of the meeting, her living room was transformed. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle, and the scent of fresh coffee filled the air. Her neighbors filed in, some with weary expressions, others carrying a glimmer of curiosity. Sarah greeted each one with a warm smile, but underneath, her heart hammered in her chest. She needed them on her side, and failure was not an option. The meeting kicked off with small talk and the usual pleasantries, but as Sarah began her presentation, she noticed the shift in the room. Their focus sharpened, eyebrows raised at the shocking facts and figures she laid out before them. The fine print she had discovered was a game-changer. It revealed the developer's potential disregard for their town's historical significance, painting a clearer picture of the stakes involved. Together, Sarah implored, her voice steady but laced with urgency, we must understand that this fight isn't just about preserving buildings. It's about safeguarding our history and the future of our community. She saw nods of agreement, and a few voices chimed in with questions and concerns, building momentum. The flicker of activism she had spotted weeks earlier had morphed into a small flame. They were beginning to grasp the implications of the developer's actions, and Sarah felt a renewed surge of confidence. Clarity was taking the place of fear. As she finished her presentation, applause filled the room, a sound that surged through her, amplifying that initial exhilaration. But just as quickly, the applause dissipated, replaced by murmurs of uncertainty. What if we can't stop him? One neighbor asked, her voice tinged with worry. That question cut deeper than Sarah anticipated. It gleamed like a knife, slicing through the newfound euphoria. Her carefully constructed narrative began to fracture under the weight of doubt, but she caught herself. We can't control what he does, but we can control how we respond. Knowledge before intimidation. That's our power, she urged, hoping to rally them back towards the fire of collective resolve. Yet, as the discussion deepened, worry clawed at her insides. The developer was merciless, using impressive resources to sway public opinion. What if the fire they had sparked fizzled out under his well-oiled campaign of promises? The meeting ended with enthusiasm, but Sarah was left feeling disquieted. The momentum they had generated might not withstand the storm on the horizon. As people departed, she was left alone with her thoughts, studying the notes she had presented. What did it take to truly unify them? Did they possess the necessary tenacity to stand firm against the encroaching threat? In the quiet aftermath of the meeting, she felt a realization wash over her. This was not only about the town or the developer. It was about her personal growth, stepping up into a role she hadn't realized she was destined for. She couldn't afford to crack under pressure. The stakes were simply too high. With renewed determination, she made a pact with herself: fly the banner of integrity and courage. Her next course of action would be strategic, aimed squarely at bolstering their community's defenses. As others began to make their way home, Sarah held fast to her resolve, but one thought lingered, resounding against her mind's wall like a persistent echo. If they lost this battle, how would she ever forgive herself? With the weight of that looming confrontation hanging overhead, Sarah knew the time would soon come to transform doubt into purpose. She would have to confront not just the developer, but also the shadow of her shy past that lingered like an anchor. And thus, the stage was set for a clash of wills, where she would either rise as a beacon of strength or fade into the shadows of what could have been. All that was left to determine was whether her burgeoning sense of resolve was enough to navigate the tempest that lay ahead. The days following the meeting were both invigorating and exhausting for Sarah. She dove headfirst into research, fueled by a sense of urgency that crackled at the back of her mind. Each morning, she awoke with a renewed determination, but was greeted with an unshakable undercurrent of anxiety. The developer's looming presence hung over the community, whispering promises that could easily sway those she had rallied only days before. Sarah transformed her living space into a war room of sorts. Sticky notes plastered the walls, scrawled with ideas and insights on tactics, the developer's history, and strategies for communication. The clattering of her laptop keys was accompanied by her thoughts racing, each tapping a reminder that time was not on her side. Amid the chaos of facts and figures, a critical observation struck her: knowledge was one thing, but the delivery of that knowledge would determine their fate. Could she convey the gravity of the situation with enough urgency to engage her neighbors without overwhelming them? The challenge would be to ignite a fire, sustained by their collective fear and hope without letting despair extinguish it. Sarah decided to host another gathering, this time a strategy session rather than a presentation. She needed to transform her role from merely an information provider to a leader, someone who could encourage her neighbors to take ownership of the fight. As she composed the invitation, she felt the weight of responsibility shift onto her shoulders, both exhilarating and intimidating. The following weekend, as neighbors trickled in, Sarah felt a familiar flutter in her chest, but this time it blended with a determination that eclipsed her fear. The scent of fresh coffee lingered, but the atmosphere was thick with expectation. No longer was she just the hopeful advocate. She was now positioned as the catalyst for potential change. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice firm but inviting. "I know we're facing a significant challenge, and I want us to think not just about what we're fighting against, but what we're fighting for: a legacy that honors our community." As she spoke, she engaged them in a dialogue, encouraging each of them to share their fears and hopes. Concerns about rising property taxes and the loss of historic landmarks surfaced, but so did glimmers of resolve. She could see recognition dawning in their eyes that the cost of inaction could be steep, perhaps even catastrophic. The conversation morphed from a collective lament into spirited brainstorming. Ideas flowed freely. Some neighbors suggested hosting community events to educate others, while others proposed an online petition to gather support. Sarah felt a swell of pride as she wove the threads of their contributions into a cohesive strategy. However, amid this surge of enthusiasm, an unsettling memory lingered in the back of her mind. Moments from her past where she hesitated to voice her opinion or take action. Each recollection was a reminder of her timid nature before this fight, and how easy it could be to slip back into that mold. "Let us remember," she said, pulling their attention back to the room. "History is full of people who faced insurmountable odds, but stood firm in their convictions. We are at the cusp of shaping our narrative, but it starts here and now. With each word, Sarah redefined how she viewed her role. She was a leader, not just in title but in action and conviction. Yet the shadow of doubt lingered, like an untamed wave ready to crash down at any moment. What if the developer had tricks up his sleeve that they hadn't considered? What if they mobilized but still lost? Each scenario ran through her mind like wildfire, threatening to douse her determination. Just as the meeting reached a high point, a knock at the door diverted their attention. Sarah barely heard the ricochet of the knock over the rush of adrenaline pulsing in her ears. Her stomach sank as she opened the door, and found a representative from the developer's firm standing there, an uneasy smirk on their face. "I believe it's time for a conversation," the representative said, eyes glinting with an unsettling confidence. With that, Sarah braced herself for the storm to come. She felt a spark ignite within, a premonition of the confrontation that lay ahead, one that would test her resolve and push her to the boundaries of her courage. And deep down, amidst the uncertainty, she understood. This was her moment to truly confront not just the developer, but the very essence of her own self-doubt. The representative's confident demeanor unnerved Sarah. She stood at the threshold, the weight of her neighbor's eyes at her back. Fresh resolve mingled with panic as she contemplated her next move. Was she ready to face this challenge head-on? The air buzzed with the remnants of her empowering speech, but the encounter felt like a test of all she had built. "Come in," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. She motioned for the representative to enter the room. Once he was inside, she shut the door, responding to an instinctive need to protect the atmosphere of determination she had fostered just moments before. "I'm Eric from the developer's office," he declared, settling his gaze on her with an unsettling blend of curiosity and condescension. "I thought it would be smart to discuss some misconceptions that seem to be circulating. You might find my offer compelling." As he spoke, Sarah felt an unsettling mix of fear and intrigue. The line he walked between informality and authority was thin, almost taunting her. "What offer would that be?" she asked, crossing her arms in a gesture of defiance. "It's simple," Eric said, a smirk tugging at the edges of his mouth. "The opportunity to partner with us. We can guarantee a path to redevelopment that honors the community's wishes, if you're willing to cooperate." The words struck her like lightning. He presented an easy way out, one that would require her to compromise everything she had fought for. It was a moment of reckoning. She was being handed an escape route neatly wrapped in persuasion. "And what do you mean by cooperate?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Assist us with your knowledge of the community. Help us shape this development into something palatable, and I assure you, your concerns will be addressed. After all, who better to help than someone who understands the fears and hopes of the people?" The offer hung heavily in the air, tempting and threatening in equal measure. Sarah's heart raced. The thought of personally benefiting while her neighbors fought to preserve what they feared losing was intoxicating yet revolting. Instead of responding immediately, she took a moment to observe Eric's body language, his relaxed posture, the confidence in his eyes. Was this the vulnerability of a man who truly believed he could sway her? "Let's say I were to decline," she said, her voice unwavering. "What then?" He straightened, the smile fading slightly. "We'll proceed with our plans regardless. But I can assure you, it won't be as collaborative as we'd like. It'll be a battle for your community. You could either help guide it or watch it unfold from a distance." His words were sharp needles, and she felt them sink into her resolve. To walk steadfast in the face of intimidation was one thing. To be threatened with the annihilation of her community was another. All those hours of planning, the burgeoning unity among her neighbors, it flashed before her like a vivid dream. They wouldn't understand her choices if she opted for compromise. "Thank you for your offer, Eric," she said, her tone steady, but her heartbeat betrayed a sliver of uncertainty. "I'll need time to think about it." "Time isn't a luxury you have, Sarah," he replied, his voice now laced with an edge that felt like a warning. "You'll need to act quickly. I expect to hear back from you soon." With that, he turned and walked out, and as the door closed behind him, Sarah felt the weight of his ultimatum settle in the pit of her stomach. She faced her living room, transformed by conviction from a chaotic war room into a sanctuary of clarity. No compromise, she told herself. Yet the echo of doubt pierced through the determination that had built. The moment felt pivotal. A crossroads that could determine not just a fight for property, but a transformative battle along the very journey of self-discovery she had embarked upon. Could she maintain her integrity, or would the allure of stability whisper sweet lies that led her astray? She placed a hand on the wall where the sticky notes had dwindled to. Essential strategies, her roadmap to navigating this turbulent territory. It was clear. The battle had shifted from a mere fight for her community to one for her very identity. As she strategized, a thought struck her: what if there were flaws in the developers' promises? What if their glamour hid beneath it a facade of destruction? The urgency mounting within her flared, and she resolved to uncover the truth behind Eric's claims. But that was only the beginning. Now she faced a deeper challenge: how to explore the depths of the developer's intentions without losing sight of herself. Just as that thought crystallized, her phone buzzed vibrantly at the edge of the table. She picked it up. The message was from a neighbor, one of the people who shared their fears and aspirations at the gathering. "I heard something alarming about the developer," it read. "Meet me at the coffee shop soon?" Intrigued and wary, Sarah's determination shifted gears. She sensed the unfolding of a deeper conspiracy that could shape this fight into something far greater than she had anticipated. It was time to discover what lay beneath that facade, one lead at a time. What revelations awaited her? Her pulse quickened at the prospect. The coffee shop's familiar aroma embraced Sarah as she stepped inside, the warmth of the place juxtaposed against the cold reality of her situation. The bell above the door chimed softly, a gentle reminder that before her lay not just the comforting cadence of espresso machines, but potentially critical information that could alter her course entirely. She spotted Elena in a corner booth, her brows knitted together as she sipped a latte. The urgency in the message had drawn Sarah in, but now trepidation knotted her stomach. How much information could someone like Elena working part-time as a waitress uncover about the developers? The thought bounced around in Sarah's mind like a pinball. Could this lead unravel the very fabric of what they faced? "Thanks for coming," Sarah said as she slid into the booth, her pulse quickening in anticipation. Elena looked up, her voice a notch above a whisper. "I overheard something last night while serving a table. Two guys from the developer's office were chatting. It sounded bad, Sarah." "What do you mean bad?" she asked, leaning in closer, almost cupping her ear as if the words themselves were fragile. They were talking about profitability margins, and the need to clear the old guard to make way for new designs. Elena's voice trembled. I didn't know what they meant at first, but it sounded like they weren't just interested in redevelopment. Her eyes found Sarah's, fear mingled with urgency. What if they're planning to displace the residents without a second thought? Sarah felt her breath hitch. This was the evidence she had been seeking. Her gut twisted with a mix of disbelief and a chilling sense of vindication. This wasn't just about a battle of redevelopment. It was something far more insidious. "They think they can bulldoze through our lives, don't they?" Sarah murmured, the weight of sorrow and fury surging within her. "Yeah, and I think they're counting on us not noticing until it's too late." Elena fidgeted with her cup, eyes scanning the room, as if expecting the developers to materialize right then and there. "If we want to stand against them, we must have proof." Sarah's mind raced ahead. This could be a pivotal moment not just for her, but for her neighbors and the integrity of their community. She recognized an opportunity to act, to rally others with tangible evidence, but she would need reassurance and strength to step into this new role as a defender. "We have to document this, Elena. If we're persistent, we can uncover more." "What else did they say?" Elena shifted nervously. "Just bits and pieces. I'll try to dig deeper when I'm at work. But you need to be careful, Sarah. They might not take kindly to you snooping around." Steely resolve flooded Sarah's veins. The prospect of facing a shadowy, faceless entity felt daunting, yet it was imperative. "I can handle it. If we're precise and systematic in our approach, we can show those who might still doubt that there's no collaborating with wolves in sheep's clothing." For the first time since Eric's visit, Sarah felt more than fear, she felt purpose. Losing sight of her integrity was no longer an option. It was now about uncovering the truth, about asserting the community's right to exist. As they made tentative plans, a flicker of excitement ignited in Sarah's chest. This wasn't just grassroots involvement. It was about taking tangible steps toward personal empowerment, awakening the latent leader within. Each bit of information was a piece of the puzzle she was determined to complete. Once she left the coffee shop, the world outside felt charged with possibility. But she couldn't shake the notion that danger lurked beneath the surface. If things escalated, would she have what it takes to confront Eric, with his enduring confidence paired with a sprinkle of intimidation? The question loomed as she pushed through the door, her heart thrumming with the weight of revelations and the pulse of uncharted territory. She had commitments to uphold, allies to mobilize, and perhaps even an unexpected confrontation ahead with Eric. While she felt the thrill of newfound agency, there was the stark reminder that digging deeper might just draw the developer's eyes toward her. Or worse, place her in their crosshairs. The sense of urgency pressed against her chest. With each movement, she was no longer just Sarah. She had become a potential threat to their plans. As she walked toward home, determination solidified her resolve. Knowing she wasn't simply uncovering a conspiracy, she was forging a path of self-discovery, one that would demand courage and sacrifice. And just as she recalled Elena's words, "Be careful," her thoughts spiraled back to Eric's smirk, and the ultimatum he had delivered. It was time to confront the truth and prepare for the battle she now knew awaited her. Would she be able to stand firm as both protector and advocate for her community, without losing herself along the way? The realization was clear. Uncovering one truth could unearth many more. Would she be ready to face whatever lay ahead? In the weeks following the coffee shop meeting, Sarah's resolve crystallized into a dedicated mission. She transformed her living room into an operations hub, gathering intel from Elena and other community members who shared her concern. Each piece of information led them closer to exposing the developer's true intentions, an unwavering determination coursing through her veins. No longer was she simply a waitress. She was a vigilant guardian of her community. As the first deadline loomed, Sarah and her allies organized themselves strategically. They hosted late-night brainstorming sessions, mulling over strategies, tactics, and potential repercussions of their grassroots advocacy. Each meeting reinforced her transformation from a passive participant in her life to a spirited advocate. The once whispering doubts began to fade, replaced by concrete plans and shared objectives. Then one crucial afternoon, the palpable tension in the air shifted. Just as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Sarah received an anonymous tip there was a community impact session scheduled by the developers. This was their chance to address the public and simmer the mounting discontent. With adrenaline surging, Sarah gathered her allies to prepare a game plan. "We need to make sure our voices are heard loud and clear," she affirmed in their meeting. "Let us grab the microphone. This is our platform." They strategized relentlessly, crafting remarks grounded in the concerns of the wider community, rather than just their small circle. The narrative wasn't to be overshadowed by promises of jobs or empty praises. It would be voiced through their shared stories and the reality of the lives at stake. They each prepared to speak, collectively amplifying local voices who might otherwise be silenced. The day of the session, anxiety transformed into resolve as she stood before the crowd gathered in the community center. The walls echoed with voices, but Sarah was prepared. As the developer's representative stepped up to charm the audience with promises wrapped in gloss, she felt a fierce sense of purpose welling up inside her. When it was her turn to take the mic, she strode to the front, empowered by the presence of her friends and neighbors behind her. "I'm just a waitress," she began confidently, the words rolling off her tongue, "but I stand here as a mother, a neighbor, and a proud member of this community." The crowd hushed, the air thick with anticipation. "We are concerned with these plans that promise to build but risk dismantling the lives of families who have paved the way for our town's character." Voices of agreement swelled from the back of the room. With every word, Sarah revealed the deceptive layers of the developer's facade, drawing on real stories and heavy emotions that connected her audience. She had transformed from internal doubt to an external force, finding clarity in her mission. For every promise of growth, we must ask ourselves at what cost. The murmurs of consensus filled the room. Her neighbors echoed her sentiments. A wave of energy rippled through the audience, driven by a palpable sense of unity. No longer did Sarah feel like an outsider looking in. She had become instrumental in her community's fight. As she concluded her speech, the applause was thunderous, enveloping her in a warm embrace of acknowledgement. For once in her life, she didn't feel like just a waitress, she felt recognized, affirming her role as a leader. The self-doubt that had plagued her youth disintegrated, replaced by fierce competence. Afterward, the developers faced a formidable wall of resistance during the Q&A, and their confident salesmanship began to falter under the scrutiny of local citizens who pressed for accountability. Each question posed revealed cracks in their polished narratives. Evidence Sarah and her followers had gathered began to unravel their manufactured assurances. As they left the community center that evening, a profound sense of fulfillment washed over Sarah. Not only had they made their voices resonate, they had turned adversity into collective strength, proving that even a waitress could stand against towering giants. Days later, as the tension settled, they received unexpected news. The developer had decided to meet with the community leaders to revise their plans, promising to consider their concerns seriously. Sarah couldn't believe it. This single act symbolized hard-fought recognition, establishing her newfound position in the community. She felt a swell of pride, knowing they had achieved a noteworthy victory against overwhelming odds. Looking ahead, Sarah embraced the undeniable transformation within herself. Each moment of fear had become a stepping stone toward deeper confidence. She had achieved clarity and forged her own identity, all while defending her community. No longer just the waitress from the diner, she emerged as a recognized voice of change, advocating for the lives that each tall building and slick development betrayed. With a solid determination to keep this momentum alive, she wasn't done yet. Sarah had found her place not merely serving others, but actively shaping her future and her community's legacy for years to come. This profound sense of accomplishment propelled her toward newfound aspirations. And she knew it would not end here. It was just the beginning of endless possibilities. If you resonate with Sarah's journey of transformation and want to see more captivating stories of personal growth, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these transformative tales reach those who need them. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful conclusion with at least 5 friends who need to witness this remarkable journey. Your actions can inspire hope and change lives. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Sarah's journey and what the future may hold.